Hey, what's going on, guys? Yesterday, a massive lightweight matchup was announced. We are getting Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis, 5 rounds in Paris, September 28th. But it's not 100% confirmed as the main event yet. There's some speculation regarding that. Apparently, both fighters have said they've been told that it's the main event, but the UFC explicitly has left out main event, and a lot of the reporting has left out main event. So we're going to talk about what could potentially be the main event of this card if it's not Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis. We're going to talk about Brendan Allen, who's come out and talked about the UFC Paris card, who may be the most entitled fighter on the entire roster. He is now ducking Nassourdine Imavov. And we're going to discuss potentially Ciryl Gane fighting on UFC Paris. Because when this announcement was made, a lot of people were like, well, what about Ciryl Gane? Ciryl Gane was kind of like earmarked for UFC Paris. There's been rumors flying around for the last couple months about what may headline this card. It looks like right now it'll be Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis. That could change in the future. We're going to break it all down in this video. I want to start off by looking at MMA Fighting's report, because if you skim through MMA Fighting's report, right here at the bottom, it says, it is unclear at this time whether the bout will serve as a headliner for the event, and with the UFC Paris scheduled for September, more fights should be announced in the coming weeks. Right here at the bottom. So we don't know for sure that this is going to be the main event. Apparently, according to legit sources, they have talked to both Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis. By the way, this fight is not signed yet. It's not officially announced by the UFC, but it is confirmed, verbally agreed upon. So this fight's going to happen unless there's an injury of some sort. But we don't know for sure that it's the main event, but it is 5 rounds, which if this somehow ends up being the co-main event, I absolutely love that it's 5 rounds. Renato Moicano, Benoit Saint-Denis is a banger matchup. Now, you also have MMA Junkie here. Now, I don't know if they, reached out and confirmed or what was going on here, but they imply that Saint-Denis versus Moicano is the main event. A native of Paris, Saint-Denis headlines a UFC show for the first time and does so in his native country. So take that for what you will. I think there's a possibility that it's not a main event, but we're going to get to that a little bit later in the video. Before we get to like Brendan Allen and him ducking Nassourdine Imavov, let me give my reaction to this fight. First off, regardless, main event, not main event, absolutely positively love that it's 5 rounds. This is a banger matchup. I know Moicano is on a winning streak. He's coming off that win against Jailton Turner at UFC 300. And I know Benoit Saint-Denis coming off a loss against Dustin Poirier at UFC 299. But this matchup makes a lot of sense, man. This is a banger matchup. Both guys pretty well-rounded. I mean, Renato Moicano isn't great on the feet, but his grappling is really, really solid. That he uses grappling to beat Renato Moicano, or not Renato Moicano. He uses grappling to beat Jailton Turner in his last fight, who dropped him badly, didn't go for the finish. And Renato Moicano has kind of had this career resurgence over the past, year or so, stringing together a win streak at lightweight, formerly at featherweight. And he's fighting Benoit Saint-Denis, who was an absolute savage, who had that huge step up in competition against Dustin Poirier, looked really good but faded and then got finished. And what's so unfortunate, I love Dustin Poirier, okay? What's so unfortunate is if Benoit Saint-Denis won that fight, we would have got Islam Makhachev versus Benoit Saint-Denis at UFC 302, which would have been incredible. That would have been an incredible matchup. But nonetheless, he's sent to the back of the line now. I believe he's currently ranked. We'll look at the rankings real quick. I think he's currently ranked number 12. If you look at the rankings, yeah, he's ranked number 12. Renato Moicano is ranked number 10. So it's crazy to me. I know it makes sense based on kind of their recent wins, but it's crazy to me. Like when I initially thought of this fight, I thought, oh, Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be ranked higher. And then I looked at the rankings. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. But nonetheless, it makes sense in terms of the rankings. Not that the rankings mean a whole lot, because Blood and Sweat and Honolulu 9.9 are making it. But absolutely love this matchup. You look at Renato Moicano, win against Jailton Turner, win against Drew Dober, win against Brad Riddell. Absolutely got the brakes beat off him by RDA, but that was back in 2022 on short notice. And then you look at Benoit Saint-Denis. They lost to Dustin Poirier, but before that, starched out Matt Frevola, starched out Thiago Moises, starched out Ismael Bonfim. And by the way, this Thiago Moises fight was in Paris. Go back and rewatch that fight. Paris literally has the best crowd in the UFC. Incredible crowd. Amazing. I mean, the atmosphere, I'm telling you right now, bar none, UFC Paris was the best crowd I've ever seen. The UK and kind of that area over there, Paris, France, some of the best crowds ever in the UFC. I know there's talk about, oh, this crowd's horrible, that crowd's horrible. UFC Paris, I cannot wait. It is a phenomenal crowd. Remember when Ciryl Gane fought Tai Tuivasa? Crowd was crazy for that as well. That may have been the same card. But anyway, initial take on the fight. Love the matchup. Makes a lot of sense in terms of where they are in their careers right now. Early prediction, I'm going Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm very, very confident in Benoit Saint-Denis. I've been a big believer. I know Benoit Saint-Denis has kind of been overhyped a bit by a lot of fans. I know he hasn't had that real signature win yet, and he kind of, he lost to Dustin Poirier, and everyone was like, oh, he's a fraud. He got exposed as a fraud. First off, if that's the performance of a fraud, I don't know what universe you're living in. He had a super competitive fight with Dustin Poirier where he ran out of gas and got starched. He went into the fight with staph infection. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that's coping with the loss and that's making excuses. And if Benoit Saint-Denis was talking about it every other day, I'd be criticizing him. Just take the loss. Let people make excuses for you. But at the end of the day, we have to take into account. He clearly had staph infection going into the fight. It wrecked his gas tank against Dustin Poirier in 5 rounds. It's not going to be very good for you. I don't think he's going to make that mistake for this fight. And it's 5 rounds against Renato Moicano. Moicano has to use his grappling. But who also has excellent grappling? Benoit Saint-Denis has excellent grappling, has nasty stand-up, has nasty body kicks, is super aggressive, nasty in the clinch, and typically can keep that up. He can keep that pace. He can push that pace on his opponent. I think it's an easy win for Benoit Saint-Denis. I know I love this matchup. Anything can happen. I just don't think Renato Moicano is going to be able to go out there and just ragdoll BSD to the ground and control him on the ground. Benoit Saint-Denis, excellent jiu-jitsu, excellent grappling, super strong in kind of scrambling situations and clinch situations. And Moicano is going to be outmatched on the feet. So, you look at Moicano, he almost got stopped by Drew Dober because he went for a takedown and Drew Dober threw him and hurt him on the mat. So Moicano barely survived that fight. I don't think he's going to survive against Benoit Saint-Denis. So in terms of an early prediction for this fight, I'm undoubtedly going Benoit Saint-Denis. I think he finishes him. I think Benoit Saint-Denis hurts him bad. TKO for Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, what else could be a potential main event, or what else could be on UFC Paris? Because if you look at the card right now, this is really the only notable fight for UFC Paris. Well, today, we had none other than the admitted child abuser, Brendan Allen, come out on social media. This is on his Instagram story. And he basically admits to ducking Nassourdine Imavov. And this isn't the first time that Brendan Allen has ducked an opponent. And it's actually infuriating. And the reason I say he's one of the most entitled fighters on the roster, because look at the rankings right now. He's number 7. Nassourdine Imavov's number 4. This is not the first time. And we're actually going to break that down in a second and look at an older clip of Brendan Allen. Imagine getting offered a big fight on a big card against an opponent ranked ahead of you and be like, nah, I don't want that. I don't want that. Let's listen to what Brendan Allen has to say, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
Yo, so 2 weeks ago, this is for everyone that's been asking me what's up, when I'm fighting next, whatever. So 2 weeks ago or whatever, they said Imavov in Paris. I said yes. I said I want to be main event because I've main evented 3 in a row, won all 3.
I want to be main event because I've main evented 3 in a row and I've won all 3. First off, you lost to Chris Curtis. You got a gifted a decision because of an injury at the last 10 seconds of the 5th round, but okay.
I'm going in enemy territory, so if we're going to do it for all the risk, all the gain, let's go. Main event. Next thing you know, we see BDS and Moicano our main event.
So, first off, I have not seen that for 100% certainty. Some people have been reporting that, but it's it seems like up in the air right now. Now, in my opinion, Renato Moicano, Benoit Saint-Denis, if they're on the same card as Brendan Allen versus Nassourdine Imavov, I think Benoit Saint-Denis is the biggest name on the card. Therefore, he should headline that event, by the way.
I ain't fucking going all the way to Paris for these 2 dudes to go over me. One dude's coming off a loss, the other one barely wins, bro.
Barely wins. Barely wins. Brendan Allen's barely squeaking by with a robbery decision against Chris Curtis. So talk about barely wins. And this guy, I swear he's so entitled. This isn't the first time he's ducked a fight. He's getting offered to fight up in the rankings, probably co-main event, on a massive fight night card. And he's like, nah, I don't want it. I'm not taking that.
Nah, I'm not with it. So Imavov, if you want to fight, you want this work, whatever you want to call it, come on over to America. We'll get it done, bro. There's no way that we should be below these guys. I know it's the Ultimate Followers Championship, but even though they got the followers, just put them on the card. People are gonna come anyway. So
yeah, that's literally you. Put you on the card. People are coming anyway for Benoit Saint-Denis, not you, Brendan Allen. This actually drove me nuts. And then he had another video that he posted angry at media for saying that he's ducking Nassourdine Imavov, which he's clearly ducking Nassourdine Imavov. It's the fight that makes the most sense. This guy's acting like he's on some crazy tear. He literally got a robbery decision win over Chris Curtis, and before that beat the dead corpse of Paul Craig. And this isn't the first time he's ducked an opponent who's higher up than him in the rankings for even a main event. But we'll break that down in a second.
Again, Imavov, you want to fight, you want to get this done, whatever. If it's just immediate, you want to fight, bro, come on over to America, we'll get it done.
So basically, I'll only fight you if you come over to America. He doesn't want to fight Imavov. And a lot of people are reporting this and saying Brendan Allen's turning down the fight. And then he posts this updated video on his Instagram story.
It's crazy to me. I know I'm just a dumb redneck, but it's fucking crazy how dumb these journalists are, you fucking bums.
Look how angry he is because he turned down a fight. Oh, I accepted it, but only if it's the main event. Well, then you turned it down. There's multiple ways of getting out of a fight. You were offered a fight in a big spot, and now you're turning it down. Now you're criticizing the media. And yeah, I know you're a dumb redneck. Hence why you're tweeting about beating your, like 5-year-old daughter, 4-year-old daughter. Yeah, I whoop my kids and nobody going to do shit about it. And he goes on to say, oh, spanking and whooping isn't the same as beating. So this man beats his young daughter and then brags about it on social media and then has the audacity to complain about the media for reporting literally what he said on Instagram. So we'll continue listening.
Every one of you fucking bums. There's probably like maybe 10 good ones in the whole thing. Everyone else is just clout chasing little bitches. But whoever said I declined anything, you dumb cunts, it literally said I accepted.
You literally said you declined it if it's not the main event.
Before anyone else said they accepted anything, Brendan Allen said yes before everyone else said yes, while everyone else was in limbo. Always been that way. Whatever. Bunch of bitches.
So there you go. Brendan Allen complaining and crying and saying, yeah, the media, how dare they report my actual words? I will not fight him if I'm not the main event. By the way, again, it's not 100% confirmed that Benoit Saint-Denis versus Renato Moicano is the main event. Now, I believe if the main event is changed, because that is 5 rounds, if it's changed, it will not be for Brendan Allen and Nassourdine Imavov. They'd be featured fight on the card. They would put Ciryl Gane at the top of the card versus Jailton Almeida, but we'll talk about that in a second. I want to point to the history of Brendan Allen about turning down fights of guys ranked ahead of him, and in this case, it was a main event that was offered to him against Roman Dolidze, when Dolidze was ranked ahead of him. I don't remember the exact level of the rankings or the numbers of the rankings next to their names at that point in time. I didn't look it up for this video because it's just a kind of small note, but he openly admits here that he's ducking Roman Dolidze for a main event, hoping that Dricus du Plessis loses to Robert Whittaker so that he can then take on the leftovers of Dricus du Plessis. I mean, does it get more transparent than this? I mean, this dude is hoping for the easiest path to a title shot. Listen to this.
I heard they offered Imanov and Roman like the night of the fight, and it never even got back to me. Like, it didn't even get back to me. It was cut off there. And then
I know this was a while ago. This was June of last year. Can someone get this man a new camera? Somebody buy this man a new camera. Put me in touch with him. I'll buy him a new camera at this point. I mean, seriously. I'm not even sure who this is. Is this Brett Okamoto? It's from his Twitter account. Is this Kevin Ioli? I don't think he doesn't work for ESPN. Why would he be tweeting from Brett Okamoto's account? I don't know who this is, but it's hard to tell. It's in 480p.
And I think they just offered, again, Roman, I guess, like I said, because now he's talking, whatever. But, again, we told him that we're going to wait and see what happens with Dricus and
he was offered Roman, and he's going to wait and see what happens with Dricus and Whittaker.
And if Dricus loses, that's the play. He's number 5.
It cut out there, but he says if Dricus loses, that's the play.
So obviously, if he loses, he probably wouldn't drop. So it's just the play. So to me, it's Dricus, and if not Dricus, then we'll reevaluate the situation. But
there you go. So ducking a contender ahead of him. In this case, a main event for September of last year. Complete and utter embarrassment. And I'm telling you, this isn't going to play out well for Brendan Allen because the UFC is awfully vindictive. when they don't like some of the decisions that fighters make, specifically turning down good opportunities when you're 100% healthy, when the UFC would like to have you on a card. They want to build up the market in Paris. They want to have notable, French names on the card in Paris. And instead, Brendan Allen's like, oh, nah, I don't want to take Nassourdine Imavov, even though he's ranked ahead of me and in a better spot and arguably has a claim to a title shot right now. Instead, he needs to come to America. He needs to come to America, bro. I mean, seriously, what an embarrassment. Now, in terms of what could be the main event for UFC Paris, if it's not Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis, which is looking like it's going to be. Because there's been a lot of discussion about what's going on with Ciryl Gane, okay? There's been a lot of discussion. Why is it Ciryl Gane on this card? Because there's been talk of, okay, Ciryl Gane, Jailton Almeida will most likely headline UFC Paris. That's been the talk for a while. It's not been reported. It just made perfect sense. Well, if you go back in time to when UFC 304 was announced, which is in the UK in a couple months, Tom Aspinall had to say this about Ciryl Gane. And Ciryl Gane has been a guy a lot of people have said, Ciryl Gane's a ducker. He's ducking fights left and right, and he doesn't want to fight this guy, and he doesn't want to fight that guy. I think it's a little bit different with Ciryl Gane. We'll break that down in a second, but let's listen to what Tom Aspinall has to say.
There's only one more available guy, and that's Ciryl Gane. The UFC wanted me to fight Ciryl Gane. I said, okay, the UFC want to do it, we can do it. I'm not bothered.
By the way, I love this mentality of any fighter. But just for context, this was right after UFC 304 was announced. They're doing Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades. They offered Ciryl Gane that fight first, which I suspected to begin with, because they thought that was more marketable for the UK market, and they didn't want to risk potentially having Curtis Blades win. But Ciryl Gane turned it down for reasons Tom Aspinall explains here.
I feel like I'm the champion of the world. I'm ranked #1 in the world. I'll fight anybody. You don't have to talk me into anything. UFC are my bosses. They want me to fight Ciryl Gane. Count me in. That's okay. We'll do it. Ciryl, on the other hand, he's out there doing a film. Ciryl is trying to be the French Arnold Schwarzenegger right now. And fair play to him. If he wants to do films and be an actor, go and enjoy yourself, Ciryl. Go and do your thing. Make some money. Do whatever you're doing. But he didn't take the fight. He wanted to do his film. So
there you go. He wanted to do his film. So my guess is, if I had to guess right now, making an educated guess, maybe Ciryl Gane is still working on that film. Maybe the UFC is hoping to have Ciryl Gane headline that event, and they're not 100% sure, so they don't want to announce anything yet. So they're waiting to get kind of it figured out and signed before they announce. But it would be Ciryl Gane versus Jailton Almeida. There's pretty much no other fight right now that makes sense. And I hope they get that done. Imagine a card, Ciryl Gane, Jailton Almeida main event, co-main event, 5 rounds, Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis in the lightweight division. That would be a straight up banger just based on those 2 fights alone, which is crazy because UFC Paris is basically 2 months away. The UFC seems like they're running behind making matchups. So I'm hoping that somehow, some way, Ciryl Gane, Jailton Almeida gets made. I think that could be like a #1. I mean, the heavyweight division's all screwed up right now, but that could be potentially a #1 contender fight, depending on how John Jones, Stipe Miocic plays out. If it ever happens, I'm hoping that it actually never happens, to be quite honest. But right now, UFC Paris, it's looking like Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be the main event. If there's any changes, I don't think it'll be Brendan Allen, Nassourdine Imavov. I think they might still try to put Imavov on the card. But then again, it's like, who's Imavov going to fight? Sean Strickland's going to turn that fight down. He doesn't want to fight anyone. He did out that split decision against Paulo Costa, and he says, I deserve a title shot. Now, I don't think that's going to go over too well for him for the UFC, but I don't think he's going to take an Imavov rematch. He's going to be like, I already beat him. Why am I going to travel over to Paris? Which I kind of agree with him in that respect. But at the end of the day, hopefully UFC Paris adds some more. I don't think they would do a Imavov Cannonier rematch. They could do a Imavov Whitaker. But whoever wins that fight then is undoubtedly the #1 contender in the middleweight division. So that kind of screws over Sean Strickland's plan to wait it out and see what happens in Adesanya Dricus. But ultimately, I think it'll most likely be Moicano Benoit Saint-Denis. If there's another fight added as the main event, it will be Ciryl Gane versus Jailton Almeida, which is a straight-up banger matchup, considering Ciryl Gane's hole in his grappling. And we've seen Jailton Almeida ragdolling massive heavyweight Curtis Blades before getting finished himself. But UFC Paris is kind of in a weird spot right now. Hopefully we find out more soon. The UFC seems to be stringing us along left and right lately. I'm going to do a video about the Sphere next because We've got no information about that yet as well. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Who are you picking, Moicano or BSD, in potentially the main event of UFC Paris? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.